This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Regional clashes in Somalia leave at least 20 people dead. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni says a blast in the outskirts of the capital, Kampala, was a terror attack. And we showcase the best of African fashion at a premier event in Ethiopia. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program, Ethiopia says fresh airstrikes in Tigray region targeted a rebel training site and a weapons warehouse. And scientists in South Africa seek to reverse engineer a COVID-19 vaccine to boost access to poor countries. We begin the broadcast in the Horn of Africa region, in the central part of Somalia, where at least 20 people have been killed and over 40 others injured. This follows ongoing clashes between a paramilitary group and regional Galmudug forces backed by the Somali National Army. The paramilitary Sufi group launched a counter-offensive on Saturday evening on the outskirts of Guriel town. Somalia's government forces claimed victory and have undertaken an operation to restore peace and order.
Since yesterday at 7 a.m., we have continued to carry out an emergency operation to counter an enemy that wants to start fighting in a peaceful place against people and the administration. We have captured a number of Ahlusna fighters who were engaged in the fight. They were there to disrupt the peace, but we are treating them well.
The Somali government forces have given the Sufi militants 2 days to surrender. They have also urged the people who fled from their homes to return.
We ask the civilians in Guriel to remain indoors. We encourage all the civilians to stay in their homes until the operation will be over, so that we are able to differentiate between the enemy and the civilians.
Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni says a bomb blast in the outskirts of the capital Kampala on Saturday night was a terrorist attack. Ugandan police have confirmed 1 person died and 5 people were injured in that explosion at a pub. Isabel Nakiria reports.
Ugandan police say 3 people allegedly abandoned a polythene bag at a fully packed pub, which later exploded. So far, police says 1 person died, but 5 others were seriously injured and are receiving treatment in hospitals around Kampala.
We took cover after the blast. Some people suspected it was a car tire blast, but I was sure it was a bomb because I saw fragments.
When I was trying to enter my car and take off, the injured people were put in my car, but 1 person died.
President Museveni has tweeted saying it was a terrorist attack and he's ready to defend the country. The president also warned that he would defeat criminals and called for calm. The police has cordoned off the blast scene and are investigating the possible intention of the attack. No group has come out yet to claim responsibility for the attack. The last major terrorist attack in Kampala took place over a decade ago, killing over 50 people. The terror group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility. In Uganda, pubs and nightclubs are still closed due to COVID-19 restrictions, but some bars still operate illegally. Curfew hours are in force, but many businesses operate beyond 7 p.m. local time. The blast comes days after the UK put an alert warning of a possible bomb explosion in Kampala's busy malls. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Ethiopia has launched more airstrikes in the war-torn northern region of Tigray. Officials say 2 airstrikes on Sunday targeted a rebel training site and a weapons warehouse. For the past week, the government has unleashed an aerial campaign against rebel forces in Tigray. Fighting for the past year has killed thousands and triggered a humanitarian crisis. 2 million people have been displaced as violence has expanded into the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions. You're watching Africa Live. Is still ahead on the program. Scientists in South Africa seek to reverse engineer a COVID-19 vaccine to boost access to poor countries. And we showcase the best of African fashion at a premier event in Ethiopia.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Sharia.
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Authorities in Nigeria are stepping up efforts to recapture prisoners who escaped after an attack by gunmen. The gunmen attacked a jail in Nigeria's Oyo State late on Friday. Prison officials say the attackers gained entry to the prison yard by blasting the walls with dynamite. After an exchange of gunfire with prison officials, they freed over 800 inmates by force. At least 262 of those prisoners have been recaptured, but 575 are still missing. For the latest on this, let me now cross over to Lagos and to our correspondent, Deji Badmus, is joining us from there. Deji, what's the latest on efforts to recapture the more than 500 escapees?
Well, Beatrice, I can tell you now that more prisoners, more inmates now have been captured. Altogether, 446 have been captured. The Minister of Interior visited the prison today, and he did confirm that 446 prisoners have been captured. So they're actually looking for 392. So altogether, the number of prisoners who actually escaped, the figure has now been given, was 838. So 446 recaptured, and they're looking for 392. The minister did confirm that 69 actually stayed back. They didn't escape. And the minister said, look, the government would ensure that these prisoners are captured and brought back to prison. He said that the government is going to send, the government has their database and their biometrics as well, that they would send all of this information now to the various security agencies and Interpol to ensure that the escaped prisoners are captured and brought back to prison. He also said that the government will go after those who carried out these attacks. So two things they're doing at the moment, going after the escaped prisoners as well as going after those who carried out the attack. Beatrice?
Deji, the government is trying to recapture all the escaped prisoners. But what should authorities do, though, to stem the increasing frequency of attacks targeting prisons?
Well, it's quite a surprise that this attack is coming just few months after, I should say few weeks after another prison was attacked in the north-central Kogi state. And then sometime in April this year, we had another attack in Imo State. A lot of people would have thought that the government would have learned from those experiences. And if you also consider the fact that in October last year, we also had another major prison attack where so many inmates were freed during the #EndSARS protest. So a lot of people would have felt the government would have learned. Truth is that security at these prisons is actually not enough. You don't have enough armed gunmen, security personnel now manning these prisons, and that is what the problem is. In this case now, very few personnel, I'm talking about security personnel now, armed security personnel were actually on ground when the attackers got there, and they were not actually able to repel the attack. They were eventually overwhelmed because we understand the gunmen actually came in large numbers. So there's every need to increase security presence, armed security presence now at the various prisons across this country, because even the Minister of Interior himself did confirm that, look, it appears this was a coordinated attack and that it appears there are some individuals out there in society who are out to embarrass the government, and they are now targeting prisons. So it's left to be seen what the government will do in terms of providing adequate security at prisons now, so that this kind of thing doesn't happen. Then you also have the problem of over-congestion at Nigerian prisons. That is obviously a problem. The government would need to address that as well. Beatrice?
Deji Badimosi joining us there from Lagos. Thank you. Ethiopia's Ministry of Health has received 800,000 Sinopharm vaccines donated by the Chinese government. The jabs will help Ethiopia in its effort to contain the spread of COVID-19 in the country. The East African country has over 360,000 confirmed infections and over 6,000 people have died from the virus. Nearly 4 million Ethiopians have so far been vaccinated against the coronavirus. Ethiopia's health minister and the Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia received the vaccines on Sunday morning at the Bole International Airport.
I would like to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to the people and the government of China for their continued support and solidarity in this COVID pandemic. There is additional donation from the government of China of 2 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines of Sinopharm. And today we are here to receive the 800,000 doses from these 2 million doses. And in this pandemic, these doses of vaccines will play a huge role in mitigating the pandemic as we continue to fight this pandemic both locally and globally.
By far, China has donated 1.8 million doses of vaccines to Ethiopia, which has played an important role in combating the virus, restoring the economy, and protecting people's health. China will do its best to continue vaccine assistance to Ethiopia and promote bilateral exchanges and cooperation in public health sector.
In South Africa, young scientists are reverse engineering a coronavirus vaccine. The scientists hope their end product will reach the world's poorest people. Only 0.7% of COVID-19 vaccines have gone to low-income countries so far, while nearly half have gone to wealthier countries. Nokutula Shabalala has more.
These warehouses in Cape Town have been converted into a maze of airlocked, sterile rooms. Young scientists are assembling and calibrating the equipment needed to reverse engineer a coronavirus vaccine. Their mission is to narrow vaccine inequality globally.
Africa is maybe not as developed as a lot of the other countries who can afford to transport millions of vaccine vials at -20 or -70 degrees. That is not something that is feasible for a lot of countries in Africa. So we have to make sure that we innovate so that we can get this vaccine to as many of the African citizens as we can.
The scientists are working to replicate Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine, and they are doing it with the backing of the World Health Organization. The WHO is coordinating vaccine research, training and production in South Africa.
We've chosen the Moderna as the gold standard because it comes out of preclinical data where the various vaccines were compared head to head. And that data is showing that Moderna is actually more favorable at this stage. Also, the Moderna vaccine is cold storage is less difficult at -20 degrees. So those are two of the reasons why we decided to do that.
Many countries, including the US, have pledged to provide vaccines to poorer nations.
What I'm saying right now to the White House is we need to be practical. You've pledged 1.1 billion doses to the rest of the world, and that's good, but roughly 10 to 20% of that has only been delivered so far. But we need to actually do much more than 1 billion doses, and we need Moderna to participate in that effort. And so, we've got to hustle because if we don't, we're going to end up with another catastrophe on our hands. We can't go to lockdowns anymore. People are sick and tired of that. We got to keep the schools open, we got to keep the economy open, and that means we got to get people vaccinated around the world.
Some experts see reverse engineering, which is recreating vaccines from fragments of publicly available information, as one of the last ways to readdress the power imbalances of the coronavirus pandemic, which will give many people a fighting chance against COVID-19. Nokuthula Shabalala, CGTN.
Restoration of China's seat in the United Nations was an epic diplomatic battle, a journey fraught with obstacles.
Yes!
Africa's support was crucial. Victory saw a new era in China-Africa ties, founded on a common future and shared prosperity.
Now, over the past 3 decades, China has contributed more than 40,000 peacekeepers to over 25 UN peacekeeping missions in Africa. Chinese peacekeepers have made a positive contribution to peace and development. CGTN's Robert Nagila takes a look at Chinese peacekeepers currently serving on the continent.
In 2020, China released its first ever white paper looking back at 30 years of involvement in United Nations peacekeeping operations. In it, China commits to the basic principles of UN peacekeeping, impartiality, and fulfilling the mandate of the UN Security Council. By the end of August this year, China had a total of 2,249 peacekeepers serving in 9 UN peacekeeping missions across the world. In Africa, there are 1,820 Chinese peacekeepers under 6 UN peacekeeping missions. The largest Chinese contingent on the continent is in South Sudan, under the United Nations Mission in South Sudan, or UNMISS, with 1,064 Chinese peacekeepers. In Mali, China has deployed 426 Chinese peacekeepers under the United Nations Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission, known as MINUSMA, and a further 232 Chinese peacekeepers serve under the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, known as MONUSCO, while in the disputed region of RBA, between Sudan and South Sudan, there are 86 Chinese peacekeepers under UNISFA, or the United Nations Interim Security Force for RBA. 11 Chinese experts serve under MINURSO, the United Nations Mission for Referendum in Western Sahara, and 1 police officer in Sudan under UNITERMS, the United Nations Integrated Assurance Mission in Sudan.
Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, has hosted the Africa Fashion Reception, a fashion gala that brings together designers from all over the continent annually to showcase their work. The event could not take place in 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic and has resumed this year. Due to COVID-19 entry restrictions, it was not held at the compound of the African Union Commission, as has been the norm. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi attended the event and now reports.
Work done by African designers thronged the runway in Addis Ababa. For some of them, it was an opportunity to showcase their work beyond home.
I'm all the way from South Africa, and the reason I decided to participate today is because I feel like this is a great platform to get my brand out there and for Africa to know about my brand.
The African fashion is becoming very much more important and very known due to tourism that we have because of over 200 cultures that we have in African countries, which is very unique, and that is why we'll be celebrating African fashion.
For many others, it was a chance to get back to the limelight after the COVID-19 pandemic.
It is about time that the African Union supports their own. Fashion is a business worth $3 trillion globally. We cannot expect to tap any of that without feeding the cow. We cannot milk a hungry cow. And so I'm very happy that the African Union is definitely now taking baby steps. I'm proudly associated tonight.
But not all designers made it to Addis Ababa.
The event has attracted about 15 fashion designers from different parts of the continent. The organizers say they had a target of double that number, but because of COVID-related complications, many others could not make it.
This includes travel restrictions. The Africa Fashion Reception began in 2013 in France, but 3 years later on, the organizers, with the support of the African Union, started having it in Addis Ababa at the AU Commission.
Africa Fashion Reception are 2 editions. The first one at the African Union in Addis Ababa, where we bring all the designers here, and we take them to Paris, which is the global edition. And when we're in Paris, everybody listens to us, everybody comes, everybody wants to see, everybody wants to wear our clothes.
But the fashion gurus are concerned that within Africa, African creativity is not getting the recognition it deserves.
Because they see it as entertainment. They don't see it as business. Do you understand? I mean, people come to fashion events and they look at it, all in their heads is models going on the runway. What are these people doing? And they forget we all wear clothes. They all wear clothes. And this is what markets the designers.
Some Africans, though, believe there is hope.
It's going further. It's forward. Yes. Fashion cannot end now. Fashion is all over, forever.
You can see a lot of people coming from other African, other part of the world to come patronize African fashion. There is a big change. There's a big change. In the next 10, 20 years, we'll take over the world.
This special season is an African season. It's our season, it's our time. We need to rise and shine.
According to the African Development Bank, the value of the African fashion industry is over $1.3 trillion and is on the rise. It says the industry remains slow in growth, partly because 90% of fashion businesses are small to medium scale. There is high cost to ship fabric and materials across the world, loss of intellectual property, and high cost of copyright. Many fashion entrepreneurs here say they hope the African Continental Free Trade Area, being implemented now by the African Union, will ease these hurdles and enable them walk towards a better and brighter future. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Leicester claim a 2-1 win over Brentford in the English Premiership.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Sadly, there was yet more tragic news out of the world of athletics as Ecuadorian sprinter Alex Quinones was killed in his home city of Guayaquil on Friday, according to the country's sports minister on Saturday. Quinones won the bronze in the 200 meters of the 2019 World Championships in Doha and reached the finals of the same event at the 2012 London Olympics. The El University